Давай предположим, что все случилось, Tsarukyan с Topuria дерутся. Ты кого видишь фаворитом в этом бою?
Я не вижу шансов у Topuria.
То есть ты считаешь, что
Я
Арман
ему
нападает,
подарки
да?
тоже не даю. Арман слишком дистанционно дерется. Я, например, 80/20 я вижу победителем Армана. Я считаю, что его борьба, его прессинг, его говорить, это тоже надо учить.
Khabib Nurmagomedov stunned the MMA community by boldly naming Arman Tsarukyan as the clear favorite in a potential showdown with Ilia Topuria. That came as a surprise to many, especially considering how devastating Topuria has been, finishing 3 UFC veterans in his last 3 outings. But Khabib sees things differently. In his eyes, Topuria's style doesn't hold up against someone as complete as Tsarukyan. He broke it down, pointing out that Arman has evolved into a well-rounded threat, using range, distance management, sharp kicks, and positional control to neutralize even the most dangerous strikers. Khabib also highlighted Arman's growing experience, noting that he now has the fight IQ and the footage to study his opponents in depth, making him far more dangerous than he was just a few years ago. For Khabib, there's no debate. Right now, Arman Tsarukyan is the top lightweight in the division.
Давай предположим, что все случилось, Tsarukyan с Topuria дерутся. Ты кого видишь фаворитом в этом бою?
Я не вижу шансов у Topuria.
То есть ты считаешь, что
Я
Арман
ему
нападает,
подарки
да?
тоже не даю. Арман слишком дистанционно дерется. С ударниками держит дистанцию хорошо, ногами лучше работает. И сейчас уже Арман слишком хорошо, у него есть материал, который он может посмотреть и хорошо изучить. Если 3 боя назад, если он с ним дрался, может, он не так опасался. Но сейчас уже видно то, чего можно опасаться от Topuria. Я считаю, что в данный момент лучший боец в легком весе это Topuria.
Ты про Tsarukyan.
Да, я про
Khabib went as far as saying that Arman Tsarukyan would be close to an 80-20 favorite over Ilia Topuria. In his view, Arman's advantage isn't limited to wrestling. It comes from his complete MMA toolkit. With his takedowns, sharp elbows, suffocating grappling, and dangerous submission game, Tsarukyan has multiple ways to control the fight. Khabib also emphasized how much Arman has matured, now approaching fights with patience, careful study, and discipline instead of rushing into wild exchanges. On top of that, he highlighted Arman's physical advantages, his height, strength, and relentless pressure, arguing that on fight night, he would simply be the bigger, stronger, and more dominant fighter.
Выиграет он при этом за счет борьбы, правильно?
за счет ММА стиля.
Но,
Это не вольная борьба.
но будет проходить, да?
Арман может повалить, у него хорошие локти в партере. Очень хороший локти. Может бороться, разбаривать, спину забирать.
А вот в эту опасную дистанцию с Topuria просто не зайдет.
Не зайдет, слишком уже есть бои, он уже может посмотреть, изучить. Я например, 80/20 я вижу победителем Армана. Я считаю, что его борьба, его прессинг, его говорить, это тоже надо учитывать. Он выше него почти на 10 сантиметров, если не ошибаюсь. И он больше него весом, и в день боя он будет больше него.
Khabib also stressed that wrestling would be the deciding factor in a matchup like this. He argued that Ilia Topuria has yet to face a true, high-level wrestler inside the cage. Looking back at Topuria's resume, Khabib pointed out that names like Holloway and Charles Oliveira pose little to no wrestling threat, and even Volkanovski, while skilled, rarely leans on wrestling as a core weapon. In his words, Topuria has mostly fought strikers, not wrestlers. He even challenged people to name a single opponent in Topuria's career who consistently relied on wrestling, saying none of them used it even 20% of the time, let alone 50%.
И, конечно, борьба, она всегда рулила. Да, особенно, когда такие бои бывают. Мы все знаем, какая борьба у Холлоуэя и какая борьба у последнего Чарльза Оливера. У них ее практически нет. Они ударники. Они пошли на рожон и хапнули свое. А человек, который взял ногу, поборолся, взял корпус, поборолся.
Ну да, то, что
с такими он не дрался, он дрался со всеми ударниками. Волконовский не борется, другие не борются, но с кем он дрался? Просто назови хоть одного, хоть чуть-чуть, даже не 50%, который хоть 20% использует.
Khabib admitted it's a fascinating matchup, and even suggested the UFC might be moving carefully when it comes to booking Arman Tsarukyan against Ilia Topuria. He acknowledged that Topuria is clearly the bigger star at the moment, but emphasized that one statement win from Tsarukyan would change everything. In Khabib's view, if Arman delivers a dominant performance, the UFC won't be able to sidestep that fight any longer.
Ну, интересный бой будет. Я считаю, что... Ну, я знаю, что UFC опасаются, не хотят его так быстро убирать, Топурию. По-любому, он как медийная личность в данный момент.
И поэтому может
больше, чем Арман. Ну, если даже вылезет сейчас, что сейчас, Арман, если один бой выиграет, куда его деть?
Да, деваться некуда будет.
Они же не могут его спрятать.
Islam Makhachev also weighed in, admitting that the most logical fight in the lightweight division right now is Ilia Topuria versus Arman Tsarukyan. In his eyes, Tsarukyan has already proven himself as a legitimate contender and earned the opportunity. Makhachev went further, saying that with the right focus and game plan, Arman has all the tools needed to hand Topuria a loss.
На твой взгляд, сейчас самый справедливый бой за чемпионство в легком весе между Ильей Топурией и Арманом Царукяном?
Ну да, конечно. Если кто-то когда-то, не знаю, в истории страховал бой, делал вес, он всегда дрался почти. Ну, я не помню в истории, чтобы не давали бой. Арман сделал последний турнир вес, подстраховал бой, и я думаю, он должен быть следующий. Он доказал, что у него же была проблема с весогонкой, он доказал, что может спускаться, гонять вес, и я думаю, что это самый актуальный бой на данный момент.
У кого было бы больше всего шансов на победу?
Ну, я думаю, если честно, если Арман выйдет с правильным настроем, то он справится.
Charles Oliveira has also voiced his opinion, saying that Arman Tsarukyan deserves to be the next challenger for Ilia Topuria's title. He pointed out that Tsarukyan currently holds the #1 contender spot and has already proven his case. Oliveira also reminded fans that Arman was previously lined up for a title fight, but had to pull out due to injury, which makes him the rightful choice now.
Quem que você imaginaria que seria uma luta interessante e que causaria talvez uma dificuldade pro Topuria?
Cara, não vou te falar nem de dificuldade, nem interessante. Eu acho que o cara que merece isso é o Arman, o número 1 do ranking, então o Arman merece essa luta. Sabe, tá esperando ali, ele luta pelo título, teve lesão, saiu, então acho que é o Arman.
Meanwhile, Arman Tsarukyan has teased the idea of finally getting his shot at Ilia Topuria, though he admitted he's still waiting on the UFC to make it official. From his perspective, Topuria has been hesitant to accept the matchup, choosing to chase safer, high-profile opponents instead of risking his title against someone as dangerous as him.
I wanna fight for the title. I've been waiting so long, and Son maybe knows something.
Do you know if those conversations about a title fight are ongoing with the UFC?
They didn't tell anything yet to me. So I'm just still waiting, training, and trying to call out Ilia as much as possible. But
yeah, we've seen some of the tweets towards Ilia. They've been funny. I enjoyed the duck video that he did. What do you make of the fact that he says he would rather give up the belt than fight you, that you just don't deserve it, he doesn't want to do it?
I mean, he feels that he's gonna lose that fight, and it's better to give the belt and then like go up or like wait when what happened with me, because he knows just I'm a big problem for him, and I'm gonna get his title. He knows that, and he wants to get easy fight with Perry or Gage or with someone, just make money and do defend. But with me, it's gonna be hard for him.
Khamzat Chimaev also weighed in, saying the showdown between Ilia Topuria and Arman Tsarukyan has to take place this year. He called it the perfect clash of styles, Arman's relentless wrestling against Ilia's world-class striking. A matchup that would finally reveal who the true #1 is. Though friendly with both men, Chimaev admitted he'd be excited to see them settle it inside the cage.
You know, you're kind of friends with Ilia too, and you know, you're friends with Arman. Do you see them fighting this year?
I hope so. It's a good fight for the both guys. So fighting is, we need to know who is the best fighter in the world. So the both guys is best fighters now. So I will be happy to watch that fight. Yeah, it's a crazy fight. Arman is good moves. Like, he has a good kick, good wrestling, and the other guy has a good jiu-jitsu, a good puncher, you know. So it would be cool to watch that fight.
Arman Tsarukyan, however, made it clear that if the UFC wasn't ready to book him against Ilia Topuria, he'd be willing to face another top contender, but only if a guaranteed title shot followed. His first choice was Justin Gaethje, explaining that a win over the highlight would silence any doubts about his position as the rightful challenger. He also mentioned Dan Hooker as a possibility, but warned the UFC not to overlook him in favor of handing a title shot to someone like Paddy Pimblett. That's when Hooker jumped in. Freshly cleared by doctors to return in November, he immediately set his sights on Tsarukyan. Hooker argued that no one ranked between them was willing to take the risk, and he was more than ready to step up and test himself against one of the toughest rising threats in the division.
He said you had ducked him, but I've heard you call his name many times over the years. So there's that chat.
It just didn't work out. I'm cleared to fight in November. That fight was in October. I never even got offered that fight because I told the UFC that I don't have medical clearance. So I'm cleared for November. All he had to do was kind of sit and wait a couple of weeks. But, you know, it's just the stars didn't like. I want that Arman. I think he's a scumbag, monobrow loser. That. And knee him right in I'll cave his face right in. That's on the cards. There's not a single other fighter in the top 5 or anyone ranked between me and him that even wants that fight. Like, no one, he's the number 1 contender. No one gives a flying about.
On the other side, Shiel Sonnen weighed in on Ilia Topuria's next move, saying he was convinced the UFC was already working toward a matchup with Arman Tsarukyan. Sonnen spoke with confidence rather than speculation, pointing out that Topuria has a history of publicly dismissing fights before eventually agreeing to them. When asked why he was so sure, Shiel explained that his insight came through his friendship with someone from Tsarukyan's coaching team, giving him reason to believe the fight was closer than most realize.
Outside of illness or even if I'm breaking news to you, then I'm not sharing my opinion. I'm sharing a fact with you. It's Arman versus Ilia. That is 100% the plan.
What makes you so confident, 100% sure is going to be Arman Tsarukyan getting the shot? I've said that, I'm pretty sure I said I'd eat that hat behind me if his next fight was for a title, just because it seems so grim, Chael.
Sure.
What has changed?
Well, there's a couple things. I mean, first off, I'm obviously coming to you with information that whether I should have or I shouldn't. Secondly, I was the best man in his wedding. His name's Daryl Christian, and he's the wrestling coach of Arman Tsarukyan. Third, I just spoke to Coach Cal. I wanted to come out and I wanted to film Chimaev training, and it turns out that Tsarukyan's in the room.
Demetrius Johnson also weighed in, arguing that Arman Tsarukyan had earned the right to be the next challenger for Ilia Topuria, pointing out that he was already the division's clear number 1 contender. Still, Johnson felt the UFC seemed more interested in pushing a Topuria versus Paddy Pimblett matchup because of the built-in rivalry and mainstream hype it could create. He even compared it to professional wrestling, suggesting that sometimes the promotion prioritizes business and spectacle over pure sporting merit.
Who is next for Ilia Topuria? Now, technically, it should be Arman Tsarukyan because he is truly the number 1 contender. But they basically forced this Paddy Pimblett versus Ilia Topuria engagement because there is beef between those guys. They have had some exchanges before outside of the octagon. But this is where I had this hot take recently this week is that I said, the UFC is not a sport. Like, they get to dictate what they want to push, the narrative of what the fans want to see, which that's not what a sport is dictated on. And it's funny because my dad and my wife, Destiny, were watching the fights. And like, what the fuck? It's like WWE all over again.
Meanwhile, attention is also turning toward Islam Makhachev's expected showdown with Jack Della Maddalena, which is likely to headline UFC 322 this November. Islam appears locked in on the goal of capturing a second belt, pushing himself to the limit in training camp to prepare for what could be one of the biggest tests of his career.